Welcome back to the Niner Nation podcast. I'm your host, Evan Nazareth, and I'm joined by Christian Stremlau, a recent SpaceX employee. So he recently finished up his fall 2024 internship in Cape Canaveral. So that's been really exciting. So this episode will be focusing on the amazing projects that he gets to do through that company and his time at the university as well. So Christian, this is our first episode of 2025, which is really exciting. So what have you been doing over winter break?
Relaxing, mainly. I had a very, very hectic fall, so just sitting back and doing as little as possible really helped.
Yeah, must be nice. Did you get to go anywhere around hometown?
I just hung out with all my friends that come home from college in high school and built some personal projects, worked on that, and cleaned a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, I took a pretty chill break as well, just hanging out with my friends. We did bowling and went to a Hurricanes game, so that was a lot of fun.
Just for the record, Evan did not want to hang out with me all of winter break.
That is not true. You said you're... Yeah, so by the way, Christian and I are from the same hometown. We went to the same high school, which is pretty interesting.
He doesn't live that far from me, yes.
Yeah. So we were able to... Yeah, so he stopped by one day. I thought you were going to stop by for longer, though.
I was busy.
Yeah. Yeah, you were busy that day. But anyway, yeah, we can definitely do something sometime.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, overall, do you want to tell us a bit more about SpaceX overall as a company?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know about SpaceX, its full name is Space Exploration Technologies. And before I started working there, I actually got a call from a company called Space Exploration Technologies, and I was going to hang up because I thought it was spam. Luckily, I did pick that phone call up. So their main goal is to launch stuff into orbit, just anything at a cheap price and reliably and safely for everyone. So the way they're doing that right now is with rockets that they can launch into space and then bring back down and recover and reuse. As of right now, they're the only company that can do it reliably. There's some others trying the same thing, like Blue Origin. They just had their first test this week. It looked amazing. And on top of just launching, they also have some other fun projects. They have the Starlink program, which is global Wi-Fi for everyone, no matter where you are, with a little satellite dish, and Starship, which is a future project to go to Mars.
Yeah, SpaceX has been doing some crazy stuff recently, especially because given that it was only founded in 2002. So watching it be really pivotal and go up and coming and all these different things has been really cool. What did you think about the work culture there when you were there?
Oh, so the work culture was awesome, right? So you can tell everyone there is working for the same goal. Everyone wants to literally get to Mars, right? One week I finished up and someone asked me, did you get us any closer to Mars today? And I think that week I didn't, so I said I got us -2 feet there. But everyone has that same mentality. Everyone wants to work together. Everyone wants to help. And everyone is willing to put in the work. So it wouldn't be uncommon for Friday afternoon to start a brand new project that leads you into Saturday, into Sunday. Working weekends is just something that you do there, and it's honestly super fun, right? Like in my free time, being able to work, not my free time, I guess I was working, but being able to work on rockets, I just loved it.
Yeah, but that's definitely the cool thing about that job as well, is that your work just felt like your free time, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Being able to go out and just do those cool things.
The issue is the continuous gasping when you walk into a hangar and it just has rockets in it, and I'm like, am I supposed to be here, right? Especially as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity. So what exactly was your role and what did you get to do?
So I worked in launch development projects. So what that means is anything that is needed to launch a rocket from the ground's perspective. So any infrastructure that's there. So if it's a launch pad, if it's a hangar, if it's a processing facility, I worked with it or in it. And mainly something I worked on is air conditioning for satellites, which sounds a little boring maybe, but satellites need to be kept at when storage, and when they're being launched, they need to be kept at a certain temperature, certain humidity, and that's just something that I tried to help out with there.
Awesome. So in your time when you were there, you got to do a bunch of cool things. One of them was seeing rocket launches. So overall, like in 2024 alone, SpaceX had 131 orbital missions, which made up about half of for the entire world, which is really impactful.
Yeah.
So being there in person, how did you feel? Was it super hot? Like, were you able to feel that kind of stuff from where you were watching?
So I think that's something that everyone underestimates, right? If I ask someone, how many launches do you think have happened this week? They may be like, 1. And then you look at the launch schedule and it's just you have like 3 to 6 every week. It's crazy. And yeah, no, you can feel them if you're at work. Just everyone gets that. We will cancel meetings and go outside to see the rocket, and it is a surreal experience. At nighttime, it looks like the sun is rising. You can feel the pops, you can feel the shakes of it going up. It's really a crazy experience, and to anyone who wants to see it, just go to Florida, Cape Canaveral. You can see from anywhere there.
Yeah, that's what I thought was really sick when you told me how often they launch and that you were just able to see it from your work window and just be able to see those amazing projects.
Yeah, it's weird how much buildings shake.
Yeah,
And the noises that they make when they vibrate. It was kind of freaky at first, but it's just imagine an earthquake, just very low magnitude.
yeah, sounds cool. So overall, do you want to talk a bit more about like what experiences led you to want to work for SpaceX and like your background coming here to the university?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off with, why UNC Charlotte? So I grew up racing go-karts. I lived in Germany for 13 years, and for 8 of those years, I raced go-karts every day. So initially when I applied, I'm like, you know what, they have an awesome motorsports program, and we do. But additionally, I am a private pilot in my free time, and that just really opened up so many ideas for me on what else I can do. I mainly wanted to like work on planes, right? That was then my next focus. And then I was like, okay, that's kind of boring. What's better? And then through an awesome game that I played throughout my childhood, it was called Kerbal Space Program. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yeah, I have. I've used it a little bit.
Randomly one day, I'm scrolling in applications, and I'm like, SpaceX. Like, there's no way I even have a chance, but I'll shoot in my resume. By the way, on their application, they do ask for your SAT and ACT score. I did not remember what I got. But anyway, I applied, and weeks later, a couple of days before class started, I finished my last interview, and they said, hey, here's a job. And obviously very flabbergasted, and just looking back on what really helped me there is just experience. GPA is very important, but sometimes you got to take a step back from school and think about what work experiences you can get. Before working at SpaceX, I worked at a chemical company, which sounds super boring, but it was super cool what I was doing there. So it's just interesting to see for me how you can jump from something so different into the aerospace industry. And UNC Charlotte was definitely the best choice for that.
Yeah, and over your time at the university, they give you credit even. You've had a ton of different experiences and things that built up a lot of those transferable skills, like between your work on, because you were on the aerodynamics team as well for EV.
Yeah.
Which is another thing we talked about in an earlier episode because that's car racing and stuff like that. And
exactly.
You also have stuff like your pilot's license and stuff like that. So that like those passions towards aviation and learning those basic engineering skills, and also your work experiences, have definitely helped.
Yeah, so I remember for my first ever interview, all real experience I had was with the EV team, and that kind of carried me into my first ever internship. And it's awesome to be able to, like, the people that I got to work with there, just so fun and awesome to be around. Just being able to go from that to something bigger is just, it really shows how much clubs help on campus.
Yeah, and they all definitely help and build up. And I'm happy you took that opportunity because sometimes you never know. And being able to just apply, put yourself out there, is all the difference. So really happy for you.
Thanks.
Overall, do you want to talk about some of the launches you saw? Like one of the big things that happened in the world was when that booster came back down to the launch pad. That was like a super historic event.
that was Starship Flight 5. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen. So actually yesterday they did it again. I don't know if you saw the video. It was just as cool as the first time. And it is just an incredible feat of just engineering what they do. So I remember I knew about Starship and I knew about the idea, but then the first day I got there in Cape Canaveral, they had a Starship tower. I'm like, what are those chopsticks for, right? 'Cause I knew we could land. The idea was to land it. I never fully realized that they are going to catch a 21-story rocket with something they call chopsticks. And the joke around was that the people designing the chopsticks, there's a chance they don't even know how to use real chopsticks. So I always thought that was fun. But Starship Flight 5 was probably the biggest occasion during my time there. And then another thing that I worked on was Europa Clipper, which was a Falcon Heavy that launched out of Cape Canaveral.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you guys have a ton of cool names for things. Like, isn't the tower called Mechzilla or something?
The Starship catch tower is
Yeah.
called Mechazilla. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's what I loved is everyone is super serious. Everyone is always on their game, but there's always just these fun little things that you find. For example, the drone ships where they land the rockets. They're these essentially little platforms that go in the ocean. They're called Just Read the Instructions. Of course, I still love you, and a shortfall of gravitas. And I just think that's really funny.
Yeah. And these are huge feats because, like, a lot of the times when we've been growing up, they say, "Oh yeah, what you'll be doing one day isn't rocket science," but that's literally some of the stuff that you and I have done between the Charlotte Rocketry Club and other things that you've been working on yourself. So, yeah. Overall, how was the work on Europa Clipper? How did that exactly come together?
So Europa Clipper was a crazy project. So my second day in was when I started on it, and it was wild. But I'm really lucky that I had such an awesome team to work with. I had an awesome mentor at SpaceX who was just kept me grounded because it's my second day and I'm meeting with like completely different organizations, right? Like Europa Clipper was a JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory satellite being launched through NASA's Launch Service Program at SpaceX. So you're already going across multiple organizations to launch something. I think the final value of it was $5 billion. And it was awesome to see the whole process and how it works.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Were there any like specific challenges you had that you weren't expecting? Because was your first internship out of state as well. Like basically any challenge that you had.
So I didn't expect to like Florida as much as I did, but it was awesome. I was living in such a great place. I was living by myself, which was the first time I'd ever done that. Turns out it's great. I can have a whole apartment to myself. I missed hanging out with some friends from college, obviously, but that's okay. But there was definitely this feeling that I had to work because it's either I go into work and do cool things or go home and sit by myself. I would occasionally obviously hang out with some of the people that I worked with, but we all had such conflicting schedules. It never really worked out if it wasn't the weekend.
Yeah, but you definitely got to go to like Disney and Universal sometimes for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I went a bunch because it's only an hour away, so I took advantage of everything there.
Yeah, a lot of cool things out there. So overall, what do you think was your biggest like lesson or realization throughout your time there?
Okay, so just the number one thing is that you should never have your plate can never be too full. Well, it can be too full as in you can't work on it all at once, but I always try to accept more challenges, always try to accept more projects, but just be realistic with whoever's assigning this project or asking for help that I'm going to try and help you, but it's not right now. There's a lot of flexibility that you need. You need to be able to take on a large workload and just know how to manage it. And that's something I think will definitely help me back here in Charlotte too with my classes right now. But that's the biggest thing that I had to learn is I went from my previous internship where I had 3 projects assigned over 3 weeks to where my first week I think I had 3 things assigned and I just had to learn everything. But just accepting and working around it is the best way to learn.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really great is just being able to go in and figure it out because that's what challenges you to learn a lot more and be able to manage that.
Taking on challenges is, in my opinion, the most important thing you can ever do.
I agree. So overall, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but SpaceX has been a pioneer in a lot of ways in terms of like reusable rockets and being a huge proponent of the private sector of this because it's the first company to really come up and be a real supporter and driver of space exploration for the future. So is there anything you think about how that's going, the difference between like the public versus private SpaceX?
Well, SpaceX is a private company, which I think is awesome. It means it just works a little faster, right? And they need it. Some of those projects, the deadlines are seriously, sometimes I would think they're unreasonable, but since it is a private company and they work in such crazy ways, it's really cool to see how, because it's private, they can do things so much quicker. And I think for the future of just the space exploration industry, you're going to have to go in private. Like Blue Origin also just is the SpaceX's biggest competitor, and they're doing similar things right now, right? They launched their New Glenn rocket. I don't know if you heard about that, but they got a their satellite to orbit perfectly, right? And if they're doing that, and if they're going to start catching their boosters, they're going to be doing the same thing, which is perfect, because then the more you have, the cheaper it gets.
Yeah.
So right now, if you want to, you can go on the SpaceX website, and I think you can launch a satellite for only $300,000.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, but think about it. That's a whole satellite in space.
That is true. Like a sponsorship, like Adopt a Highway type stuff.
You think of exactly.
Basically,
Yeah.
free space. Yeah, that's really cool. Overall, do you think is there anything specifically that really fascinates you about just space in general, like black holes or Mars exploration?
Space is infinite, right? And that's just something that still flabbergasts me. Is if you think about it, I always thought space, I don't know how to say it, like more linear, right?
Yeah.
So if we want to go to Mars, okay, we take a rocket and we go straight there. Well, there's a Mars launch window that opens about every 2 years, because otherwise you'll be traveling for 6 or 7 years just getting there, whereas if you go during the right time, it's only a couple months. And that's just something that I now think is wild, that the fact that we can't just go anywhere. We have to wait for everything to line up just perfectly right. So that's just something that I think it's awesome that they can use that, right? Slingshotting around planets to get other places quicker is a wild phenomenon. And it's just something that I wish I knew more about, and I'm sure I can learn more about it.
Yeah, I never thought about how many conditions have, like, because I've thought about, like, oh, they have different conditions, but they all have to be at the same time.
Right, and it's just really funny,
crazy.
like, seeing how orbits work, right? We're all going around the sun, but we're all sort of going in different directions at different speeds.
Yeah, wild. Overall, what do you think about, like, Falcon and Falcon Heavy and stuff like that?
Oh, I think it is awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Falcon 9 is SpaceX's reusable rocket. It's got 9 Merlin engines, and it's split up into 2 or 3 stages. So the bottom part is the Falcon 9 rocket, then it has an inner stage, and then whatever it's deploying. The Falcon will disconnect from the second stage in the payload just about when it gets to the edge of space, and then it'll boost back to land. And it is a crazy thing to see, because you can see it on its way all the way up to space. And Falcon Heavy is actually the exact same thing, but instead of there being one of them, there's 3. So you usually capture 2 out of the 3. I don't think they've ever returned 3 out of 3 rockets, but they go all the way up to the edge of space, they disconnect, and they come all the way back down and then land. It is the coolest thing ever. And a Falcon Heavy, I remember the day that launched, car alarms were going off like miles away. Just the sheer power of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Was there any, like, feedback or cool moments you just had, like feedback you got from your time in your role, like things when you were working on a project and someone said, "Oh, what about this thing?"
Yeah, that's something that I sadly faced a lot. Sadly, being that I would come up with something that I think, like, this is the greatest idea that could ever happen. And I go out and I get someone's advice and I'm like, oh, this is good, but here's something I just thought about that's 10 times better, right? And I just thought that was awesome, because I was working with some super smart people who've been in the industry for so long that they do just know better. And I think that's why internships are awesome, because now if I go in somewhere else, if I go back, I will know exactly where to start.
Yeah. Overall, basically, what do you think are some key things that, like, any student can do, or someone who's coming up and wants to, like, learn more about this, to be able to position themselves to either, like, get a job at SpaceX or just learn more about space exploration? Like, what do you think are some great ways for people to get involved and learn more about that stuff?
Okay, so first of all, their website is awesome, SpaceX.com, I think. Super cool. You can learn a lot about it from there. There's tons of people online who talk about it all the time. I think Everyday Astronaut, he's a YouTube channel, talks about it all the time. But if you're interested in working there, my advice would just be get as much experience. This doesn't have to be internship experience. This can be go on your computer, look up how to build a rocket, and build a rocket, right? It's not that easy, don't get me wrong, but just showing that you want to learn goes a long way, right? Make a personal project, get a couple of group friends together, build something, right? Nothing has to be an official internship, just have drive.
I agree. Basically, anything that you do can be experience. And you've been working on a personal project recently, right?
Yeah. So after being inspired at SpaceX, a couple of friends of mine, we got together and we tried to build a rocket, which we succeeded in doing. It's just it really sucks when you build your little rocket and the parachute gets stuck in a tree.
Yeah.
So currently halted on progress with that, but we were able to make a complete rocket ourselves with fins. We got the body, we got the motors all together, and it was a crazy experience just seeing it actually launch off of the ground.
Yeah. Overall, do you think that there's other like rockets that you've designed or want to build in the future on your own for your personal projects?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just right now finding the time for that. So obviously I'd like to build a rocket, like a small model rocket that I can recover. But when you start talking about that, you start talking about, controlling a rocket as it's going, I think it goes like 100 miles an hour on its way up. Not sure how fast it goes on its way down. You have a couple seconds to control it. So there's a lot of robotics and stuff that I will need to learn, but I definitely want to, right? That's why I'm glad I have the university. They can help me with that.
Yeah, that's great. Overall, for SpaceX as a company, is there anything that they work on that you just kind of weren't expecting at all?
Yeah. The amount of resources that Starship has was crazy to me. They built an entire rocket park essentially in Texas, and its only purpose is R&D and development of Starship. I knew Starship, like I said, I knew it existed. I knew how big it was. I didn't realize the size of what they're doing, right? This is the biggest rocket, the most powerful rocket ever, and they are just building tons of them. It is a crazy thing to see.
Yeah, you just hit on something I really thought about, which is like seeing it in person. How do you feel like just standing next to these mountains?
Yeah.
Mountains.
Yeah, it's wild. And what's fun is seeing someone work on one of the engines, and they're just like fully, like their entire body is inside of it, right? Like they're reaching around, cleaning things, inspecting things, like, and they are inside of a rocket engine. And I just thought that's just, obviously they have to do it. It's just weird to see it happen.
Yeah, kind of out there question, but like how was your process? How long did it take you just to get set up to be able to work on these things, like for personal protective equipment, stuff like that? Just to, like,
oh yeah, yeah. They safety is one of the number one priorities. So getting close to these things, like you have to do a lot of training. And just obviously there's a lot of things that go with it. Like there's a national safety thing. SpaceX is a government contractor, so that's just another thing to think about. So it's pretty crazy. Just you have to learn what you can bring in there, what you can't bring close to the rockets, and just don't touch anything was the main thing, unless you're supposed to. And that was the biggest thing for me because I'm like, I really want to touch it.
I can see it being very tempting for you.
Yeah, right. just walk it over. There's so many things that are just like, I'd love to have taken home, but nothing crazy, obviously. But like, it's like a piece of memorabilia, but sadly I was not able to take anything.
Yeah, all really cool stuff.
Yeah.
You did get one of the, like, I think you got it for your dad, right? Like that torch off the
Oh
website.
yeah. So like I was saying, SpaceX does some goofy things sometimes. So on their store, they sold something called the Starship torch, and it's a lighter. It's a sort of a torch, and it's in the shape of a starship, and it is super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They have great merch. Not sponsored, but could be. No,
Very comfy.
Yeah,
so,
very comfy.
No, they I love just the random goofing around that I saw, right? So for Starship Flight 6, the entire theme of it was it's bananas, because when they were designing it, they always used bananas for scale. It just was funny, and then the shirt that came out with it was a banana, and then they started selling banana plushies. I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought all the bananas on the store was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, what do you think are some goals you have for like yourself, either going back to SpaceX or just in general, that you want to do in your career?
Oh, in my career?
Yeah.
That's good. I want to go to space. I'm not sure if that's possible, but I want to do it. And then later on in life, I want a nice house on a lake, amphibious plane, because then I can land it on the lake and park it at my house.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, isn't it a great idea? Like, that is my life goal right there.
Yep.
Don't matter where it is. Just want a lake house and a plane.
Solid goals. Overall, for SpaceX's launch locations, they're in Texas and Florida.
And California. Yeah, so it's actually really cool the way that whole thing works, right? Is if you want to get something to orbit the Earth, it's typically easier to fly east, just because the way the Earth is rotating. If you fly east, you're kind of being slingshotted around by the Earth. So that really helps get a satellite just up into orbit and around, right? Because if you're launched west, you're going against the rotation, so you have to use a little more power to just get circular. So that's what they mainly do in Cape Canaveral, right? You're super close to the equator where the Earth is spinning at its fastest, right? So you just go around there. Whereas in California, they launch from more polar orbits, right? So you want polar orbits so you can get more ground coverage. So they launch south so that it goes over the poles instead of the equator. It's just a random fact.
Yeah, no, that's interesting for sure. I didn't think about the pole differences there. Overall, do you think there were any cool like company events you got to go to or people you got to meet?
Oh, I got to meet tons of cool people. To me, they were cool. They were super interesting, right? Like, I would meet people who started working at SpaceX that were coming from Disney. I'm like, how do you go from Disney to SpaceX? And then I remind myself that I went from a chemical company to SpaceX. That was super cool. And then some of the events it was super fun to just hang out with everyone. Like, even when they're not working, these people are super fun. And that's something that was really weird to me. I remember showing up to the first work function, like out of work, and seeing everyone dressed in their non-SpaceX like clothes. I'm like, wow, these people have lives outside of work. No, but it was super cool, just the amount of people that I got to meet and just talk to there.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really cool for you. So overall, what do you think has been like the most rewarding part of being at UNC Charlotte and your time at SpaceX?
Okay, so I actually really like being at UNC Charlotte. I think we have an awesome campus. I have great friends here, and so as many of you may know, Evan and I founded a club together, the ATC Club. One of the most rewarding experiences here was showing up to a meeting and there being like 20 people there. That was pretty cool. At SpaceX, there was tons of rewarding moments, mainly when I finished projects, got reviews, and getting good reviews on them. That was pretty neat. And just what was super interesting for me is that my work was being taken super seriously. In my previous positions as internships, it's like, oh, here's something fun. Let's have the intern do it, where I do it and it doesn't get carried on. It doesn't have any effect on the company. Whereas in SpaceX, they're like, oh, we hired you. You're going to do work for us. And I think that is super cool that I got to do actual meaningful work. And something I worked on will actually hopefully be used in a couple of years because they plan out pretty far on a satellite that's, I think, going to Mars. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's awesome. You touched on a lot of cool things. Yeah, ATC, for those who don't know, stands for Advanced Technologies Club. I think that was really cool that we were able to start that together
Sick.
After our freshman year. Yeah, I think what's kind of funny is how we met to begin with because the first time we did go to the same high school, but I think what is a really funny part of that is we didn't meet till our first day of orientation for college.
Yep.
And then a few days after was our graduation, which was delayed. And that's when we saw each other again on the parking lot headed to graduation, which I thought was really crazy.
Yep. Went to high school with Evan for 4 years and quite literally met him on the last possible day that I saw everyone.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting tidbit about us. And then, luckily we've been able to do a bunch of cool projects here between the clubs we've had and found an organization. And you've got to do a bunch of cool stuff as well. So I'm really happy for you. I think that's a lot of the key points that I wanted to get across from today. So thank you. So what overall do you want people to take away most from our conversation?
Just because something is challenging doesn't mean you shouldn't take it on. Mainly, just, if someone asks you to do something with them, like a personal project, it's going to be work, but like just think about how fun it's going to be, right? Even if it's something negative, if you have a horrible class, you have to take, just be optimistic about it, right? I got praised a lot for being over enthusiastic. Because if you weren't enthusiastic in my job, it would be a little tough sometimes with the amount of things that would break that you need to just know how to fix. Just keeping up a good, being enthusiastic, being happy, being nice to everyone you work with just makes the world a difference.
Yeah, it really changes your whole perspective going into something saying, this is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
These are who I'm going to do it with. And that's how it's going to be.
You got to roll with it.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's our time for today. Thank you again, Christian, for your time. Really appreciate it. Be sure to tune in for episode 7 of the podcast and follow @CurrentCLT and @the.Nazareth for updates on episodes. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned and go Niners.
Go Niners.